without problems. As you may be able to tell from my slightly haggard expression, I've just come out of hospital. There is the cannula mark where they anesthetized me. So that's the first difficulty. I'm struggling. And the second problem is that Facebook has deauthorized StreamYard, so I'm not able to connect to our major link. And the third problem is my guest hasn't managed to make it yet. So apart from that, everything's fine. Anyway, I've just turned up here just to show willing, to show that the intention is there, even if the flesh is weak. So what we intended to do today was to discuss with our viewers the subject of morality. And we intended to begin by showing a little video that I've made, which gives my idea of how we should take a look at this subject. So I'm going to screen that now. Is morality objective? Let's take sexual consent. It's immoral to have sex with somebody who's underage, isn't it? What is that age? It's 14 in Brazil, 21 in Bahrain, and in the United States, it depends what state you're in. There is no agreement. Or take capital punishment. The dark green countries have abolished it. The red countries still consider it's okay to do it. There's no agreement. So the word morality is useless. A much better expression from biology is social behavior. Nurturing behavior is so strong in some social animals it even works across species, even across classes of vertebrates. Google it. Caring behavior has obviously evolved, and it is often mutual. It is a major factor in the survival and success of social animals. Is that what morality is? We've selected sheepdog for their tendency to herd sheep. If you think behavior isn't inherited, try doing it with a wolfhound. Believers want their concept of morality to be objective. Now, I doubt that perfect objectivity is available, but surely programmed into our subconscious must come close. Soldiers have to be put through extensive training in order to overcome their natural tendency not to do harm, and even then, it makes them ill. All this is consistent with the idea that we are adapted to behave in a kindly way towards each other, that is, morally, especially as we achieve much more by helping each other, and harming a person is likely to lose their cooperation. It's reasonable to conclude that social animals have evolved behaviors that make them successful. That is, their population grows. There was 7.6 billion of us in 2018. Think how moral we must be to have been that successful. Yes, we have a few psychopaths, but you can't have evolution without variation. And it's not objectively wrong to kill. Recently, police shot a stabber in South London. They were not prosecuted. Now let's look at the claim that morals are objective and downloaded from God. Different religions have different moralities, so they can't be objective. And if the claim of God sent was true, shouldn't highly religious places be more moral? Well, there's statistics on that. This map shows religiosity. The blue places are the least religious. Notice Canada, Japan, Australia, and Europe. This map shows killings. Look, it's very low in Canada, Australia, Japan, and Europe. Now, obviously, there's other reasons for lawlessness, but isn't it odd that in the USA, most shootings are in the Bible Belt? Well, there you are. That's my thoughts on the matter. And I'm pleased to be able to say that Chris has located us. we're back in communication, Chris Atlee and I, and he's going to join us in a few minutes. So Chris, you might know, is otherwise goes under the handle of Atheist Pastor. And people ask him, isn't that a contradiction? How do you call yourself an atheist pastor? Well, here's the story. He got involved with the Christian church in Australia and was picked out as suitable pastor material. So they pushed him onto a course, and he did almost the entire years of study of theology and not missionary, what do they call it? For being a pastor. And then just before he completed the course, he read the Bible. And that's what turned him into an atheist. But at that point, he was very nearly a pastor, hence atheist pastor. Now, thank you very much for watching, the few of you that are. We had I think it might be a time zone issue, because Chris thought we weren't due to start until 2 hours' time. And I'd worked out that it was supposed to be now. But apparently one of us is wrong, just as likely to be me. They're supposed to be 11 hours ahead of us in Australia, where he is. And so I've got 9 a.m. here. That means it's 10 p.m. there. But he says it's 8 p.m. there. So I don't know whether they've gone on to summertime or something like that. If only the world was flat, okay? So if anybody's got any questions to ask about the subject of morality, please go ahead. I'll put up a banner so that you know what the drill is. There you go. Welcome, all viewers. As I said, I'm sorry about the hiccups at the beginning of this show. For those of you who've just joined us, I've just come out of hospital, so I'm only firing on 3 cylinders. And Chris and I had a mix-up with the time zone. And meanwhile, Facebook has decided to deauthorize StreamYard, so we can't link to our major source of audience. Anyway, here he is. Chris, welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm struggling. Look, that's the cannula mark where they anesthetized me a couple of days ago. They leave a bruise.
Well, that's always good fun, isn't it? So
Yeah.
I've got some good news and some bad news for you, John.
What's that?
You're right that there is an 11-hour time zone difference.
What's happened?
Your maths was off. If it's 9 there, I think you might have had it as a 13-hour difference. You got it the 1 hour off either side.
Oh, right, I see. So
It's
9 and 11 makes 20.
Well, if you go backwards,
20 isn't 10 o'clock, is it?
Yes.
Okay, that's my fault.
These things happen. Yeah. It's such as life. So I believe you were saying there's some issues with Facebook. We've missed the Facebook mob, have we?
Yeah. Well, you know, periodically with updates and things, the links change, and so StreamYard can't connect to the list of platforms that you've already got loaded.
Yes.
And so you have to.
There is a fix for that, but I had the same problem myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been struggling to do the fix, and I've done everything. I've restarted Chrome. I've restarted the entire computer. I've gone through, and it says that I have reloaded Facebook Atheist page, but it doesn't actually work. It says I've reloaded it today. You know, it's got all. So I
technology.
I appear to have done everything correct, but nonetheless, it doesn't work. So we're only going. We're only going
such as life.
Yep. So we're only going out to YouTube and a small Facebook group, which is Atheism UK.
Oh, excellent.
So there you go. Hopefully, next week, if you're available, we might get this right.
Stranger things have happened. I'm sure we can work something out. But I'm hoping there's some great questions that have come through in the meantime.
Well, there aren't, I'm afraid. No. No, it's we're still waiting for our first question. So I'm going to talk to you about cricket.
Oh, that's a sore point for Australians at the moment. But we did have a lot of stormtroopers and Darth Vader at the cricket today, I believe.
But you've got rain in Brisbane, so
I believe so. I haven't really watched the cricket too much this year, to be honest. It's it's I don't know. It's just not exciting me this year. Sports in general, I think, because everything's been so topsy-turvy with what's happening in the world. It's sort of made it a little bit difficult. Plus, I'm too busy streaming. I'm too busy doing things like this and finding myself having all these sort of wonderful conversations with people sort of all throughout the world. So it's cricket was never really my favourite sport anyway. It was just always the summer sport that happened to be on, and we'd always give it a good watch. But generally it's rugby league. This time of year is a little bit different, I guess, but it's probably more international sports for us now. I think having access to, I think growing up it was only we watched what was local. There might be one Premier League game on every week, and it'd be on, the funny channel at 2 a.m, and you never saw of it. Now with access to so many different things, so much sort of variety in what we can watch, it certainly gives us something. We have got a few people popping into the chat, I see, which is good.
Yes.
So good to see some people.
Yes.
Actually, we've got some people I'm noticing a few people from the US and the UK there. So good morning to it's Ed and Donna that I can see there. Good morning to both of you. Well, good evening from my point of view.
It must be very early in the US right now.
It is. It would be so where Ed is. Ed's actually a really interesting character. If you ever get the chance, he's definitely someone worth having a conversation with. He's a former white supremacist. He spent many years locked up, and while he was locked up, sort of fell into a religious white supremacist group, and since sort of coming out, he's completely turned that around. He's now probably one of the most fierce anti-racism fighters you'll ever meet, and also a really great voice in the atheist community. Still relatively new to it, only been in the atheist community for probably about 6 to 9 months off the top of my head. Sorry if I'm wrong there, Ed, but he's really sort of come a long way and sort of impacted a lot of people in that very short time. And certainly I've learned a lot from him because, I guess some of the life and lived experiences he's had are very different to the ones that I've had. So very interesting guy. Definitely worth getting him to pop on at some point.
I'd be interested to hear what turned him against religion. He seems to have done a real about swing.
Well, he watched a podcast with this bloke called A-theist Pastor or something, but I'll take the credit for it. But no, it was I believe it was just part of his journey out of this particular and look, obviously I don't want to tell his story for him, but it was part of his journey out of the group he was in. I can't remember the name of it, but it was almost like a religious white nationalistic group that's almost like an atheistic. Really, it's a really quite peculiar one. But
I'll tell him you said that.
No, he'll he'll say a lot nastier things about it, but it's certainly it's an interesting story. It's definitely one that I think a lot more people do need to hear. So, I'll throw it out there. We've got a few people in the chat now. So, if you've got any questions that you would want to ask an atheist, and I'm looking at a lot of the names in the chat, and I think there's a lot of atheists there, but maybe there's on the question of morality, because that's what we're talking about tonight. I guess morality in atheism. I guess if there's anything or any questions that I guess people in the chat have come across, maybe that's something that we can get out and I guess throw there. And Ed's clarified it was the creativity movement, and he left because of education. So it's education's also why I left religion as well. It's funny when you start to study something and read it, and you go, hang on a second, some things aren't quite adding up here.
It's good stuff, education, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it's good. It's so look, I thought that when I became an atheist, I'd want to get rid of Bibles from everywhere. But I can tell you now, I think that Bibles should be mandatory. Everyone should have to read it from cover to cover, because the more people that read it, the more atheists we're going to get.
Yes. Well, going back to the, I suppose, topic for today, I prepared a 3.5-minute video on my attitude towards morality, because, as you know, I've been in education for my whole life. I'm a retired science teacher, so I prepared this 3.5-minute video, and I'd like to screen it now and see what sort of reaction some of our audience gives us. Here we go.
Sounds good.
Is morality objective? Let's take sexual consent. It's immoral to have sex with somebody who's underage, isn't it? What is that age? It's 14 in Brazil, 21 in Bahrain, and in the United States, it depends what state you're in. There is no agreement. Or take capital punishment. The dark green countries have abolished it. The red countries still consider it's okay to do it. There's no agreement. So the word morality is useless. A much better expression from biology is social behavior. Nurturing behavior is so strong in some social animals it even works across species, even across classes of vertebrates. Google it. Caring behavior has obviously evolved, and it is often mutual. It is a major factor in the survival and success of social animals. Is that what morality is? We've selected sheepdog for their tendency to herd sheep. If you think behavior isn't inherited, try doing it with a wolfhound. Believers want their concept of morality to be objective. Now, I doubt that perfect objectivity is available, but surely programmed into our subconscious must come close. Soldiers have to be put through extensive training in order to overcome their natural tendency not to do harm, and even then, it makes them ill. All this is consistent with the idea that we are adapted to behave in a kindly way towards each other, that is, morally, especially as we achieve much more by helping each other, and harming a person is likely to lose their cooperation. It's reasonable to conclude that social animals have evolved behaviors that make them successful. That is, their population grows. There was 7.6 billion of us in 2018. Think how moral we must be to have been that successful. Yes, we have a few psychopaths, but you can't have evolution without variation. And it's not objectively wrong to kill. Recently, police shot a stabber in South London. They were not prosecuted. Now let's look at the claim that morals are objective and downloaded from God. Different religions have different moralities, so they can't be objective. And if the claim of God sent was true, shouldn't highly religious places be more moral? Well, there's statistics on that. This map shows religiosity. The blue places are the least religious. Notice Canada, Japan, Australia, and Europe. This map shows killings. Look, it's very low in Canada, Australia, Japan, and Europe. Now, obviously, there's other reasons for lawlessness, but isn't it odd that in the USA, most shootings are in the Bible Belt? Well, there you go. That's my thoughts as a science teacher. I think that morality as seen through the eyes of a theist, a believer, is a concept. And what we should be doing is observing rather than thinking.
Morality's, there's no objective morality. As far as it's all completely subjective, because even with people who hold similar thoughts, I guess yourself and I, there would probably be a lot that we would agree on. There's going to be things we disagree on. Now, that can come down to a number of factors, such as, the country that we live in, our lived experiences, I guess our political leanings, there's a lot of different factors. So, it's, I'll give you an example. I've got people who live up the road from me who are very, very strong supporters of the political party that I'm not a part of. I support another political party. So we sit on opposite sides of the spectrum. Now, we live in the same community. Our upbringings, our lives are reasonably similar. But on a lot of key issues, and I guess with politics, you do get a lot of the social issues that will come into it. We hold completely different viewpoints, and even people who are within the same political movement as I am, we hold different viewpoints on certain issues as well. So I think that's something. But when it comes to religion, and even people within the same religion can't agree on what's moral. And it's funny because last night we had an episode on my channel where it was do atheists want to sin, and we went through some of the classic Levitical laws, and the first one was the one that struck me, which is essentially if you cook toast too much, if you overcook the toast and burn it, and if you burn honey, well, that's a sin.
Yes.
So now I don't think that anyone would say that God has put it on their heart that if you burn the toast, that you should go to hell. But certainly I would say that as a society, we've got...
I'm wearing a simple shirt.
Oh, mixed fabrics?
Yes.
Straight to hell. You are going straight to hell. So there's that. So I see we've got a question from Ed, the grumpy old dude. Do we think it's moral to try and change someone's religious beliefs? I think it's circumstantial. I think... look, I have no issues with people holding religious beliefs. If someone wants to be a Christian, a Muslim, Hindu, a Scientologist, that's completely their choice. I'm very big on freedom of expression and freedom to live your life the way you want to live it. Where that starts to impact on other people, I do have an issue with that. I think from a religious point of view, I know certainly in Christianity, they feel that they have a moral obligation to go out and make disciples. So I guess from my point of view, I'd probably say that, where you're indoctrinating children into a religion, that can be a cruel thing, because I think that concepts such as hell and immorality can do a lot of damage. But then from the point of view of that religious person, Jehovah's Witness who knocks on your door, they're not doing it because they're a nasty person who just wants to annoy you on a Saturday morning. They're doing it because they genuinely believe that it's the morally correct thing to do, and that they're potentially going to save your soul.
Well, I dipped into your six-pack a bit last night, but as I said, I've just come back from hospital and I keep dropping off to sleep. So it's no offence. I didn't mean to drop off to sleep.
You know what? My dulcet tones will often put people to sleep. I can understand that, so I take no offence.
Anyway, let me take a look at this grumpy old dude, Ed's question. It's a good question because there's a couple of ramifications here. For a start, I don't think it's possible to change someone else's religious belief. I think the only person who can do that is them. And whether it's moral to try or not depends on your personal religious mission. And my view is that we are all born atheists. In fact, I did a blog on my Patheos page a couple of days ago.
That's interesting. I think we could have an interesting discussion on that, because I'd actually hold a different view.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to that in a minute, maybe. Then I can show you my blog. And the thing is that it's none of anybody else's business. Basically, there is no reason for anyone to try and impose anything on anybody else. So dressing that up as whether it's moral to do so or not is out of question.
Yeah, and look, I think intent will also come into it. Like if I were to meet someone who, they're religious, they're not harming anyone, it's just and it genuinely benefits their life. If I were to go out of my way to deconvert them just because I wanted to make myself out to be intellectually superior or something along those lines, I can see that there would be a moral issue there. However, if I also approached that person, had we just had a genuine conversation, and through, I guess, that conversation they deconverted or something would happen there, then it's not a moral issue. So there's a lot of factors that can come into it, and then once again, it's all subjective. I mean, I'm talking about, I guess, how I view it from my moral standpoint. Your moral standpoint could be completely different. If the pastor at that church knew that I'd assisted in the deconversion of one of the, they would probably think I was an immoral person. I had committed an immoral act. So that's where that subjectivity comes into it. And I guess it's probably one of the things that I guess leads me back to there is no God, because if there is a God with a moral standard and objective, why are there so many different opinions on what is and what isn't moral? Why does philosophy exist to discuss ethical issues? If there was just one standard, that would be it. And if God has put on our heart that what's in the Bible is true and correct, then why don't... Well, I guess I do get upset if I burn my toast, but that's only because I personally don't like burnt toast. But I don't see that as a horrible sin. I know people who like to have their toast burnt, and I think they're very strange people. But
especially with the face of Christ.
Well, actually, that is a great question. If you burn the face of Christ, is that idolatry? Is that a miracle? I mean, what is it? Is it a sin? But then you look at something. I mean, the obvious go-to that all atheists seem to get love is slavery. It's always about the slavery issue. Slavery is absolutely immoral, and I think you would struggle to find many people who would say that it is moral. I mean, obviously, different people have got different thoughts, and at different periods of time, people thought it was a moral act. But if God has put on our hearts that what's in the Bible is the moral code, well, then why aren't we sitting here saying, well, yes, slavery, I wouldn't want to be a slave, but it's completely moral and it's completely understandable. I guess the attitude towards women in the Bible, where women are essentially treated as, they can be sold. I mean, if a woman's assaulted, the punishment is you've got to pay a number of shekels to the father to basically buy her. Yeah. I can't imagine, maybe that's something that in certain parts of, I guess, the Middle East that they might still practice similar things to that there. But I think in modern society, certainly in the West, we would all agree that is completely immoral. I think you would find less than 0.1% of the population who would think otherwise. And they're the ones who are probably best served behind bars in an institution of some kind. But
there's so much in this question here, because trying to change someone's anything is an act of education, isn't it?
Sometimes
And
it depends. It depends on what it is. Once again, it's
well,
the context is the key. Yeah.
Can I go on? Because the whole urge behind education is to lead, is to show people what's available, what's out there, and then let them decide. It's not indoctrination. It's not even instruction. Instruction is what the army does to the soldiers. But in a classroom or in a lecture theatre, what happens is information is presented, justified, discussed, and either adopted by the audience or not. It's a voluntary thing.
Yeah, look, I don't think you can force anyone to change their belief. Well, maybe at the sword, like it says in the Quran, you can force someone, but whether you actually change their what's going on in their head is another story. Look, I really do think. I think to get back to the question, I guess I keep coming back to the context and the intent. I think they're the keys. Like I said, the Mormon missionaries, I don't think anyone converting to Mormonism is a good thing because of some of the horrific things they believe and certainly the way that they act. But I don't think those 18-year-olds knocking on our doors are there because for any other reason than they believe it is the morally correct thing to do.
I'm tempted to screen my blog on birthright.
Oh, that could be a whole can of worms there. That might be a can of worms for another one. That's I know there was the big atheists of rocks thing going on that. I'm not a philosopher. I'm gonna say that as the first thing.
Me neither.
And I would hold that atheism, in its true sense, is not just the absence of a belief, but an active non-belief.
Well, can we go through this? I don't know whether the text is big enough to read.
Yep. But yeah, I can read it there. Yeah.
Yeah. So at birth, since our brains haven't even learned how to use our eyes yet, that's the state of incapability that we are at. It takes about 3 months before the brain learns how to focus. The eyes are this new gadget that it's never met before, So it's inarguable that we can't be born with a religion. We can be born into one merely by location. That's a geographical accident. But nobody in their right mind would claim that we are born with a right-wing or left-wing political ideology. So it's ridiculous to think that some people consider us to be born Christian, Muslim, Jewish, or whatever. So I contend that it's our birthright to be an atheist. What do you think?
Yes and no. I guess the religious would argue that that you are born with a religion and it's put on your heart and all that kind of jazz. Obviously, we disagree with that. Once again, it comes down to, I guess, the definition. I think the definition can change. I think certainly everyone is born secular. Everyone has a secular outlook until they think something else. But I guess we don't always know how a baby's brain works. I mean, we don't know that a baby isn't born, sees the doctor and thinks, wow, that's my creator. So you don't, it can be a hard one. The other thing atheism is from what I understand, and I guess my limited philosophical understanding, is a not just a lack of belief, but an active non-belief. And I don't think you can have an active non-belief at a young age. So for me, I look at when I guess my transition from theist to atheist, and there was a lot in between. There was certainly agnosticism. There was, the thought that something might be out there, to the point where now I will say that I hold a belief position that there is no God, or no gods, no divine beings.
We're a bit different on that respect, and I know you had a journey.
Oh yeah.
I was lucky in that I chose my parents carefully, and they weren't religious, so I never.
I was lucky there too. I just made some silly decisions in my teens and 20s.
Yes, but it meant that I didn't get indoctrinated, so I didn't have to escape. But the thing is that I disagree with you about your definition of atheism, because I can't really see how you can have a positive belief in not believing, if you see what I mean.
Well, I believe that there is no gods. So I'm not. It's not really a positive belief in a negative. I actively believe that there are no gods, that there is no supernatural. I also know that I don't have an explanation for everything. And look, I'm neither a philosopher or a scientist. I'm not the best person to have this discussion. I certainly know people who are a lot more educated on this issue than I am, and I know that there's different terms, and I think the term atheist has almost, in a modern setting, is what I think would be defined as secular, and I can certainly understand, because I think atheist has become the umbrella term that is used to bring a lot of people in together. I guess if I'm going off the classical definition of what it is, and I believe it's Oxford philosophy, Oxford Dictionary of Philosophy, I believe, that defines it that way. But I mean, look, I also hold the attitude that if, in my opinion, someone's agnostic and they tell me that they're atheist, well, as far as I'm concerned, they are atheist, because that's how they're identifying. So I've got no issue with that. But look, I'm not I'm a historian, not a philosopher.
People can identify themselves how they like. It's up to them to do the labeling, isn't it? Not up to other people. When other people do it, that's straw manning.
So I would hate to define a baby without asking their opinion.
So atheists come back at us. How can atheists have morality without a belief in something bigger than themselves?
That's a great question. You know what? That is a very common question that I think we get as atheists. But morality, you don't need something bigger than yourself in a divine sense. If I look at things that are bigger than myself, so our society is bigger than myself. I guess the laws, our government, or our respective governments are bigger than myself. Now, morally, I think it's fair to say that morality has evolved and is probably still continuing to evolve. To give some recent examples, if you were to go back 50 years and talk about same-sex marriage, well, not only in a lot of the world was homosexuality illegal and frowned upon, and you would be shunned in society, but the thought of two people of the same gender marrying was just a completely foreign concept. Yet here we are in 2021, where same-sex marriage has been something that has been accepted and law in a lot of places for at least the last sort of 5 to 10 years, or in some cases more. But then we have a look at say the Middle East and some of the I guess the Islamic nations, where their morality is different, and that's because of on the issue, and that's because of the culture and the society that they find themselves in, and the standards of that society. So what I would say is, there is something for my morality. There is something bigger than myself that I do, I guess, gauge what I believe is moral or immoral from, and that is the society in which I find myself, and my personal experiences, and I guess personal beliefs.
Well, this, to my mind, this makes an assumption that that morality has to come down from above. It's dropped on us from some height, But in fact, if you look at the evidence, it's grown up from below. Worms weren't very moral.
No.
Fish are a little bit moral, and then
occasionally,
yeah. And some of them are, some are better than others. A cod lays about 3 million eggs and then buggers off and takes no care of them whatsoever. In fact, it might eat a few. But sticklebacks, they are very good parents, and so are seahorses. In fact, it's the father that does the parenting in their case. So we've got plenty of evidence to show that morality has evolved and got increasingly sophisticated and complex from the bottom. We don't need anything bigger dropping it on us. That's a nonsense.
And we are a social species. I mean, the reason we've evolved and we've been able to achieve what we have as a species is because we rely on each other, and we have that need to look after each other. We'll say, well, morally, we shouldn't go around killing or hurting each other. And as crude as it might sound, that potentially, or that likely comes from the fact that we need each other. We need each other to function as a species. What's his name? Yuval Harari makes a good point that if you were to have one human fight one monkey, the monkey will, the ape will probably win. We are apes. Gorilla. Okay, if it was a human versus a gorilla, the gorilla wins every time. If you have 100 humans versus 100 gorillas, then what you're going to find is the humans will win because we cooperate, we work well together. So we have a reliance upon each other.
Yes. And this is what I wanted to show, because I agree with you that morality has changed. And this is me saying that very thing in Manchester University about a year ago before lockdown. Let me get this going.
Morality. It's changed. Thank heavens it's changed. Would we want to go back to the days of witch burning? Would we want to go back to the days of, and it still happens in some countries, noticeably theocratic Muslim countries, stoning to death female adulterers? Would we want to, or would we prefer morality to change, to get more modern? I think the latter. Thank heavens, morality has changed. We've grown up. We're not Stone Age men anymore.
Well, there you go. That's a debate I had in Manchester with what's his name? Not coming to mind. You saw the Islam.
Yeah, I saw the other. Yeah,
the Muslim.
He didn't look too happy with you, but that's okay. So, see, an interesting, and I guess it comes back to that subjective morality again. It's, can we judge people in other societies based on the morality of the society in which we live in? Now, when I say other societies, I'm talking about other societies throughout history and also other societies in the world. Is the person who I guess, stone someone to death in the Middle East, we certainly would consider that to be morally, reprehensible. But to them, it's not. So how do we then, what standard do we use to judge? And this is where I say, well, it is subjective, but it comes back to what's acceptable as a society. Where I think we're fortunate at the moment is we are moving towards a more global society with a better global standard. But we're still working that out. We've still got some parts of the world that are well behind, and I guess we've got some parts of the world that are well ahead. And I think you'll often see ideological clashes on morality from those two extremes. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot with, I guess, what happens in the West and the Middle East, especially as the Middle East modernizes. And I think something like Saudi Arabia is a classic example of that, where if you were to go to Saudi Arabia, it's a very, very modern looking and feeling place. But then the way that women are treated in Saudi Arabia is something that hasn't caught up, but the rest of the world is pressuring them to catch up on, and they're making slow steps. So, I mean, they've been applauded recently in Saudi Arabia for allowing women to drive.
Yes.
Now, for you or I mean, if I were to say to my wife that she wasn't to leave the house without my permission, if she was to cover up, and she certainly shall not be driving because it is just morally wrong for her to drive as a woman, I would have to start ducking the objects that would be thrown at me. But certainly there is those different standards. Now, the question I guess I would propose is, if I was born and lived in Saudi Arabia and I said to my wife, well, no, you can't go out and drive, morally, under the standards of that society, it would be a different outcome to the standards of our society. And when I say our society, I guess I'm talking, Australia, England, even the US is a little bit, the US is a little bit crazy at times, but
the Western world.
Yeah, we have a different standard. And actually, I think a great example of where we see that is on social media, where certain people will get upset at certain things that, even amongst Western countries, where I guess, someone will be saying, well, hang on, I don't see the problem. But it's different standards, different societies, different cultures. So, but I think we are getting closer to that global culture. We've still got a long way to go. But I think once we have that as a I guess a community of humanity, I think then we'll really start to develop what our moral standard is.
Wouldn't that be nice, eh?
It would be.
Now, Godless Scummer says, I'm still not exactly sure where I fall on the objective versus subjective morality argument, and he's also no philosophy expert. Well, neither am I. But
he does have beautiful long silver hair, so he's the silver fox. So he puts you to shame there, John. He has this lovely. He's English. He's got this lovely silver locks. He's a good guy, actually. Good guy, Jeff. Good to see you. Good to see you on here. But no, I don't think any of us are philosophy experts.
Nice to meet you.
I've got friends who are. Yeah, I've got friends who are philosophy experts, and I tend to cede the ground to them on these things, but and just sit back and learn.
Incidentally, I'm calling my hair extreme blonde, not silver fox.
Oh no! That's what I'm saying. He would put you to shame. I'm a bit of salt and pepper with the two grey lines that you can sort of see going there, and there's a few other hidden ones at the back that we won't be getting on camera today.
Anyway, I've got views about objective versus subjective, because I don't think it's possible to have perfect objectivity, because once you interact with something, then you are processing it, and it therefore becomes subjective. The only perfect objectivity might be in the processor of the remote vehicle on Mars, where it's looking around and sending back images. That might be perfectly objective because it's not imposing any bias from its own mind onto it. But I also think that something which has been evolved, adapted over millions of years, and therefore programmed into our subconscious, a behavior tendency, that's as close as you can get to objective. And I contend that, and the evidence is with me, we have plenty of observations of people in the main behaving nicely towards each other, which I contend is morally. And in my video, I put up the example of the soldiers, which have to be trained, shouted at a lot in order to make them behave nastily towards the enemy. And even when they've succumbed to that training, subsequently, they're likely to get ill. They're likely to get PTSD. So I'm saying that our brains are manufactured, programmed to be objectively, in terms of, programmed into us, moral towards each other. And
I would tend to agree. I think you're right there, actually.
And on top of that tendency, we can exert a decision. So we go about thinking, I'm going to be nice, I'm going to be nice, I'm going to be nice. But then somebody threatens us with a gun or something, and we think, no, I'm going to shoot you first. That's the subjectivity bit. And because every incident is consequential. So that's my view.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't disagree. I think you've actually put it pretty well there.
Oh, thank you.
I love an argument as much as anyone, but I think you've probably got that one, yeah.
So I wanted to mention that Saudi Arabia, they've done some polls recently, and the new generation coming through are much more a-religious than their parents. So watch this space. I'm thinking that this is a wedge that's going to grow.
Oh, look, certainly. I think, especially as we become more connected, there's a lot more ideas and thoughts out there. I guess, where people would have been, 50 years ago, you were very limited who you communicated with. So, if you were wanting to research religion, you were having to go to a library, you were having to go and study at a tertiary level, which wasn't an option for most people. Most people just went, finished school, got a job, went to church on Sunday. And we go back even further. I mean, it's if you go back, one of the things I find fascinating, say about 13th and 14th century Europe, is you could go from one village to another, and the next village could have a completely different language, completely different culture, and completely different understanding of the way that the world worked and operated. Most people wouldn't go more than 10 miles from their village or where they lived, with the exception of when people went into the city purely for trading purposes. But even then, it wasn't the entire village, it was just some of the village. Am I the Hindu pastor? No, I'm the Dopey Russell Crowe there. For those who aren't aware, I did a debate with a fellow Christian apologist by the name of Darth Dawkins, who he's a presuppositional fellow, and what I decided to do was use his arguments, but with Hindu deities, and so I converted to Hinduism during the debate, used the arguments, and then deconverted rather shortly after. So that is a bit of a running joke, the Hindu pastor.
I've had a similar encounter recently on Facebook with an old sparring partner, because we've been postulating that the FSM is the real deity and putting forward all of the Christian angles but substituting FSM. And hopefully this guy, who I've argued with a lot because he's a presuppositionalist, like you say, and hopefully now that he's putting himself in that mindset, he might be able to begin to think how ridiculous it sounds.
You might find it's wishful thinking. I find people who have a presuppositional worldview tend to be pretty locked into it. It's more for everyone else who's watching and listening to. Even this fellow I had the debate with, he said this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense what you're saying. I'm just like, my point exactly. We've just replaced your religion with this religion. And this is how it works. So, it's interesting. I try to avoid debates a lot of the time, but I tend to find myself getting dragged into them. So the second they find out I'm a former religious leader, that's it. They all want to either reconvert me or show that I'm the devil or something like that. Well, I think it's extra Christian points if you reconvert a former Christian leader. So
I do get involved. Anybody want to debate me, I'm up for it, because I see it as a continuation of my life's mission, science teaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say I won't lie, I do enjoy it when I do it. I just try and avoid it, but I don't avoid it very well. And maybe that's by choice. I don't know.
Anyway, Chris, I'm going to bring this to an end in a couple of minutes because you've been fantastic, and I didn't want to ever take up more than an hour of your time. And
most people can only put up with me for an hour, so it's okay.
I'm sorry that I messed up the timings. I must go back to school and learn how to add up and do the 24-hour clock.
If that's the worst thing that happens to me today, then I'm doing okay, I think.
So I just want to do a bit of a promo because later on today in this part of the world, in the Northern Hemisphere, I'm doing another show, which is Global A-theist News. This is a weekly show, a new show, in which we itemize from all over the world examples of news which very often gets dropped off the bottom of what the Americans would call the regular news, because it's not considered to be worthy in a country which is predominantly Christian, predominantly Muslim, or whatever. So I'm highlighting all of these items in a weekly news show going out on these channels, if I can make them work, later on today or early Sunday morning for you. Global A-theist News. So thank you very much, everyone.
Or GAN for short. Don't miss GAN. GAN will be great.
GAN for short. Yeah, I've got one lined up for tonight. Every Saturday here, Sunday morning in your part of the world. Everybody watching, thank you very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe, all that nonsense. Chris, you're a hero. Thank you very much.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but I'll try my best.
Bye-bye.